Hey guys, tonight we slip back into the damp, flickering alleys of Tudor England, right where the fog clings low, and the air smells like wet wool smoke and something less poetic. You're stepping into the gritty reality of 16th century London, and spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this. It's late evening in Southwark, just across the Thames from the more respectable parts of London. Officially, you're outside the city walls, but don't worry, this area's buzzing. Alehouses line the road like teeth, crooked and stained. Bathhouses pump out steam that carries not only heat, but also rumors and diseases. And the brothels, they've been here since Chaucer's day. Locals call them stews, not because they're warm and nourishing, but because everyone inside is slowly simmering in filth. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from a faraway place or somewhere just as foggy, drop your city and local time in the comments. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You walk along bankside, boots squelching in horse muck, and something else you'd rather not identify. A drunk stumbles past, laughing with two girls, one with kohl-rimmed eyes, the other wearing a red velvet ribbon around her neck. That ribbon isn't just for show. In Tudor code it says, "I'm for sale." These silent signals are everywhere. Colored sleeves, rings on certain fingers, the way someone leans against a doorway. You're beginning to see how sex work here isn't hidden, it's woven right into the neighborhood's daily life. Historians still argue whether Southwark's tolerance for prostitution was practical governance or moral failure. Either way, the Bishop of Winchester owns most of this land. Ironically, he profits off these stews through leases and fines. So yes, a clergyman is your neighborhood's ultimate landlord. You're probably wondering if these places are secret dens of sin. Nope. Many are licensed. That's right, you need a permit to run a brothel. Technically, you're supposed to close shop during Lent and avoid harboring married men. But like all great rules, those are widely ignored. Enforcement is spotty. One constable might look the other way. The next could haul you to court for a wink. As you walk past a stew's front door, you hear someone plucking a lute and giggling. A dim candle flickers in the window, revealing more than it hides. Inside, it's all low ceilings and stained tapestries. The place smells of rosewater, old sweat, and ale. You step in. Congratulations, you're not just visiting Southwark. You're moving in. You've arrived with little more than the dress on your back and maybe a rumor about easy coin. Maybe you're here because your husband died. Or maybe your family couldn't feed you. A few girls were sold into the life by their own kin. Others just ran away looking for something better and finding this instead. A woman eyes you from across the room. Not warmly. She's older, lined face, fine rings. That's Mistress Ellen. She runs this stew, and you'd better hope she likes your teeth, hair, and attitude. Because if she doesn't, she'll send you packing. Or worse, lease you to a less friendly house. Outside, a bell clangs. Curfew approaches. The city gates will close soon, trapping you on this side of the river till morning. Don't worry, you'll get used to it. Eventually. Some of the older girls, seasoned sharp, invite you to sit near the hearth. They share crusty bread, a tiny piece of cheese, and the kind of advice that sounds like a threat and a prayer at once. Don't take food from clients. Don't trust a man who pays too quickly. And if you see a man with a crooked feather in his hat, run. They laugh when they say that last bit, but not kindly. You'll learn why soon. A fun little fringe fact. Southwark's brothels were sometimes located right next to bear-baiting arenas, Yes, real bears chained and set upon by dogs while people cheered. Imagine the noise, the blood, the mingling of entertainment types. You're not just in a brothel. You're in an ecosystem of barely controlled violence and vice. By now, you're exhausted. You lie down on a shared mattress stuffed with straw, your legs sore from walking all day. Someone snores in the corner. Someone else cries softly. And outside, a pair of boots stops by the window. Your first customer will probably arrive tomorrow. Sleep tight. Morning creeps in through the shutters like a thief, gray, reluctant, and already sticky with the sour smell of the Thames. You wake with straw poking your back and someone else's foot over your ankle. The stew is stirring. Someone is already boiling a pot of posset. And then she walks in Mistress Ellen. She doesn't knock. She never knocks. She just enters with that same wooden ladle she uses to stir soup, settle disputes, or on bad days threaten noses. Her gaze finds you instantly. You try to sit up straighter. She doesn't smile. Up, she says. You've got work to learn. You are in every way that matters her property now. Not by law, perhaps, but by necessity. You eat because she lets you. You sleep under her roof. You use her threadbare linens and when the time comes, her makeup. In return, she takes a share of your earnings, more than a share really, and controls your every hour. Mistress Ellen didn't always run a house. She used to work the rooms, as they say. And though she's long retired from the bed, she remembers everything. That's why she's efficient, brutal, kind sometimes in a terrifying sort of way. Think of her like your employer, landlady, priest, and parole officer rolled into one weary corset. She takes you upstairs to show you your station, a tiny cubicle curtained off with musty velvet. There's a chipped wash bowl, a cracked mirror, and a worn wooden chair. Better than some, she says. Don't break anything. Then it's time for training. You spend the morning watching the older girls prepare. They paint their faces with mixtures that would make your modern dermatologist faint, lead-based white paste crushed berries soot for eyeliner. One girl, Annis, uses a bit of burnt rosemary to darken her brows. Another mixes a dab of pigeon droppings into her face cream. For youthful glow, she says. You nod. You don't question it. You'll get your own look eventually, but not before Ellen inspects you. That's right, inspection time. You stand under the cold eye of your new mistress while she evaluates your hair, teeth, hips, and skin like a butcher assessing cuts of meat. Decent, she says. Shame about the scar. She means the little one on your knee. You hadn't thought it mattered. Historians still argue whether women in these stews were treated more like laborers or livestock. In truth, it probably felt like both. Next comes wardrobe. Ellen opens a chest full of second-hand bodices, lace, and petticoats. Don't get picky, she snaps. You don't own it. You pick a faded blue gown with a neckline that dares gravity, and a hem trimmed in something that might have once been gold. It smells like lavender and sweat. Finally, you're introduced to the house rules. They're written down nowhere, but you'd better memorize them anyway. Be polite even when they're drunk. Never take coin under the table. Smile, but don't get sentimental. If a man starts talking politics, just nod. If someone from the church comes in, treat them like royalty. Yes, you heard right. The clergy visits often. They're technically supposed to be your moral overseers. In practice, many of them are just customers who tip poorly and confess later. The girls roll their eyes when they come. You will too in time. A knock at the door. A man enters. Not for you yet, but the air changes when he steps in. The room rearranges itself around him. Mistress Ellen straightens her bodice. The older girls suddenly look busier. You catch on fast, he's important. A noble, a merchant. Someone with connections. You avoid his gaze. He doesn't avoid yours. Later, Ellen warns you. Don't charm him too much. He's married. Wife has spies. You don't know whether to laugh or weep. As the day ends, Ellen lets you help with chores. You sweep, scrub, and change bed linens. One mattress is so stained it might have its own family tree. You try not to gag. The stew's dog, Mangy Jack, follows you around. He's missing an ear and half a tail, but he guards the front door like a soldier. Quirky detail of the day brothel dogs were sometimes trained to bark only at men who tried to leave without paying. You're already grateful for Jack. By candlelight, Ellen shows you the accounts book handwritten in messy ink. Every client, every coin, every fine charged to the girls. Late to curfew, that's a shilling. Tear a dress, 2 shillings. Say no to a customer without a valid reason. Let's not find out. As the candles gutter out and you sink back onto your straw bed, you realize something chilling. This isn't a bad dream. It's your job, and tomorrow it's your turn. You're up before the sun again. Not because you're an early bird, but because Mistress Ellen shouted something about presentation and threw a cold washcloth at your head. Welcome to your first day as a working girl. The older women swarm around the cracked mirror, jockeying for space like hens at a feed trough. Someone's arguing over a tin of rouge. You sit quietly, holding a stub of coal and a rag that used to be white. Your hands tremble just enough to mess up your first attempt at a beauty spot. It ends up looking like a spider bite. Here says Annis, the one with the pigeon-dropping face cream. She licks her thumb, wipes your cheek, and draws a better dot with surprising care. Now you've got the look. All you need's the nerve. You look at yourself in the broken mirror. Powdered pale skin, cheeks, 2 red lips slicked with crushed cherry. Your eyes look enormous and scared. Now here's a fun fact to distract you from your rising nausea. Did you know some Tudor women used crushed pearls to add shimmer to their foundation? That's right, literal powdered jewels. Of course, if you're in a stew like this one, pearls aren't exactly in the budget. You'll have to settle for chalk dust and bravado. Mistress Ellen claps once and barks, "Line up!" You shuffle down to the main room with the others. Clients will arrive soon, and you're the new exhibit. The other women flank you, subtly displaying themselves. One crosses her legs just so. Another tucks a curl behind her ear, slow and deliberate. It's all theater. The room is a stage. You are now part of the performance. And here come the patrons. The first smells like garlic and goat. The second wears a velvet coat too fine for this place, maybe borrowed. The third looks at you and doesn't blink. Ellen nudges you forward. Your first client. He's young, maybe 30. Wears boots without too much mud. His hands are clean. He speaks kindly. It almost disarms you. He offers a silver penny to Ellen, who bites it, shrugs, and pockets it. Then he gestures toward your curtained cubicle. Your legs feel like jelly, but you lead the way. Inside the tiny space, everything feels wrong. The air is thick. You remember Ellen's words. Smile, stay calm, don't cry. He starts to speak something about your hair. You nod. You smile. You pretend. You don't feel like a person in this moment, more like a role someone forgot to rehearse you for. When it's over, he thanks you. He hands you a copper coin directly. That's not allowed. You're supposed to give everything to Ellen. But you slip it into your boot anyway, a secret. You stay behind the curtain for a few minutes, just breathing. You feel heavy, emptied out. Someone outside is laughing. The stew hasn't stopped just because your world tilted. There's blood on the sheet. Not much, but enough. First time. Ellen doesn't scold you. She just nods, hands you a cloth soaked in lavender water and says, "Clean up fast, more will come." Historians still argue whether most Tudor sex workers were willing participants or economic hostages. But in your bones, you already know it doesn't feel like a choice when all the doors out are locked. As night deepens, your shift continues. Some clients are drunk, others frighteningly quiet. One wants to talk, just talk. You almost cry from relief, but you don't let it show. That's one of the rules: never let your face betray what you feel. And here's a curious tidbit in some stews. Women developed signature moves or catchphrases, an early form of branding. Ellen says one girl used to sing as she worked. Another did impressions of nobles. Maybe you'll find your trick. Maybe you won't last that long. When you finally get to lie down, your body aches in places you didn't know could ache. You stare at the ceiling and wonder how many others before you stared at the same cracked beam, wondering the same thing. Mangy Jack curls up at your feet. He doesn't care what you've done today. That helps in a strange way. You fall asleep with makeup still on hair, tangled heart pounding a little less violently now. You survived your first night. Barely. You don't dream much anymore. Sleep comes in pieces when it comes at all. And the first real rest you get is when the house finally quiets around dawn. But even that's fragile. By mid-morning, Mistress Ellen is banging pots again, barking names, reminding everyone that idleness is a sin. And worse, bad for business. Your legs still throb. Your hips ache. Even your teeth feel loose somehow, though that might just be stress. There's no privacy here. No time to process anything. You scrub linens alongside Annis while someone else scrapes candle wax off the floor with a dull knife. It's going to be another long night, because this isn't just a job. It's a production line. And now that you're in the system, you work. Night after night. Client after client. There's no day off, no sick leave. If you're lucky, you get a slow hour between men to breathe and eat a bit of stewed carrot. This is what a night's work really looks like. Let's walk through one together. First you dress. Same bodice. Same painted face. There's a strange comfort in the routine. You learn to tie laces fast, smear rouge faster. You even start mimicking the others, tilting your chin just right, holding your smile 1 second longer than feels natural. You learn that different men want different versions of you. Some want you chatty. Some want silence. Some want fake innocence. Some want something darker. You never really know what kind of night you'll have until they walk through the door. And that door, it never stops swinging. Tonight it starts with a man who asks if you're clean. Not emotionally, he means the other kind. You say yes. You have to say yes. But the truth, you've already noticed something. A sting, a rash. You don't say a word. You don't get paid for honesty. Then there's the sailor who smells like pickled fish and sea brine. He's loud, laughs a lot, slaps your thigh like you're a tavern bench. He pays with foreign coin and doesn't care when Ellen frowns. He's gone in minutes. Next is a man who cries during the whole thing. You have no idea why. You don't ask. You just hold his hand and whisper something soft you don't really believe. One after another, By the third or fourth, you barely notice the bruises anymore. The bruises are expected. What still surprises you is how numb you can feel and how quickly. Historians still argue whether some Tudor sex workers developed coping strategies or truly dissociated from their labor. Some say women formed protective bonds with each other, creating found families. Others suggest that trauma ran too deep to bond at all. In your case, it's a mix. Sometimes the other girls are your sisters. Sometimes they're competition. The stew has a ledger. Every client is recorded, every payment logged. Your earnings are always less than you expect. Mistress Ellen takes her cut, rent, clothing, rental, food security. What's left? Maybe a copper or two for you. Just enough to make you think you're working for yourself. A quirky tidbit, some brothels actually posted price lists on the wall like menus at a tavern. Different acts, different prices. Extra for candles, that sort of thing. You've never seen one here, but you've heard stories. Now and then you try to talk to a client. Not flirt talk. Just to feel human again. But most aren't interested in that. They don't want your thoughts. They want your body, maybe your laugh, maybe your tears, but never your truth. One nobleman tells you you'd make a lovely servant. You smile. He leaves a silver coin on the floor, like a game. You crawl to get it after he's gone. It's midnight now. Someone vomits in the hallway. One girl slips while carrying a tray of wine. Glass shatters. Ellen screams. The dog barks. Life goes on. By 2 a.m., your body's moving without thinking. You no longer flinch when someone touches your arm. You say the same words, give the same smile, even as your soul starts to feel like worn leather. The last man of the night is quiet. Too quiet. He doesn't speak, just watches. You try to guess whether he's dangerous or shy. You're wrong. He's both. When he leaves, you find your wrist bruised, your lips split. Ellen shrugs. It happens, she says. Put vinegar on it. You do. It stings. Everything stings. You lie down on the mattress. Your limbs hum with exhaustion. The makeup is smeared. Your breath smells like old wine and onions. You close your eyes and think of nothing, because thinking hurts worse than the bruises. Outside, the Thames flows on. Dirty, cold, indifferent, just like the world. You barely feel human anymore. But in Mistress Ellen's house, you're expected to act like one. Smile, bat your eyes, giggle if the man jokes, even if he smells like rotting eel, and thinks touching your face with his muddy boots is charming. You're learning that what you do with your body isn't nearly as important as how well you pretend it doesn't bother you. But beneath the surface, there are rules. Not laws, those are distant, unreliable things enforced by men who visit the stew at night and sermonize by day. No, these are house rules, and Ellen's are legendary. You break one, she doesn't just fine you, she reminds you, loudly, publicly. Mistress Ellen's stew is part home, part prison, and part training ground for surviving men. The first rule, never refuse a customer, unless he's violent or clearly diseased. Which, spoiler alert, isn't always obvious. You're expected to accept whoever walks through that warped wooden door. The stew doesn't run on your comfort. It runs on coin. Second rule. Curfews are sacred. After sunset, you don't leave, not even to get air. If you miss curfew and arrive late, Ellen docks your pay and sometimes locks the door on you until morning. One girl once slept in the alley with Mangy Jack to prove a point. The point didn't land. Third rule. No falling in love. Not with the customers. Not with each other. Not even with the idea of leaving. Ellen makes this very clear one night when she catches two girls whispering behind the curtain holding hands. This is a business, she hisses, not a theater for tragedy. And yet tragedy is always on the menu. You learn the secret phrases the other women use to describe things without saying them directly. A cold egg means a sickly client. A shadow day means you're working, but don't want to be touched. A storm coming usually refers to a visit from the bishop's men, or worse, the Lord Mayor's constables. A quirky little detail. In some brothels, the women weren't allowed to keep mirrors. The idea was that vanity led to distraction. Others believe it was so you wouldn't see what was happening to you over time. Either way, you rely on your reflection in wine bottles now. It's not flattering. There's also a rule about coin handling. Every payment goes through Ellen. No pocketing. If she finds out you've hidden even a farthing, she doesn't just take it, she shames you. Stands you up in front of the others, reads out your crime, and makes you sweep the stew's filthy yard for days. But then there's the unwritten rule, don't break. Don't cry too loudly. Don't scream unless absolutely necessary. Don't show that you're unraveling even when you are. Tonight, a girl named Betsy does just that. She bursts into tears during a session. Her client leaves. Ellen is furious. If you can't handle it, she snaps, go beg on the street. See how long you last out there. Betsy apologizes, voice shaking, eyes red. She's only 16. You're not much older. Historians still argue whether brothel life offered any sense of female community, or whether it broke down solidarity through relentless competition. What's certain is that even small kindnesses, someone sharing their bread whispering, be careful before a rough client feel revolutionary in a place like this. You find yourself watching the others more closely now. Not with jealousy, but with curiosity. How do they do it? How does Anna still laugh at the end of the night? How does Mistress Ellen keep track of 20 girls, 10 rooms, and 36 secrets? You catch a glimpse of Ellen late one night alone in her room. Her corset off her hair down, staring into the fireplace like it's whispering something only she can hear. You realize she isn't a villain. She's a survivor playing a different role. One you might wear someday if you last. But right now you're still in the costume of someone pretending this isn't killing you slowly. Mangy Jack curls up again near your feet. It's strange how comforting a half-deaf, one-eyed dog can be in a world like this. You don't believe in miracles anymore. But you believe in getting through the next night. And that's rule number one, really. The one no one says out loud, endure. Sunday morning, and the stew is quieter than usual. Not restful, just subdued. Everyone moves a little slower. The washbowl water is colder. The bread is staler. But no one dares complain because Sundays are when the priests come sniffing around. You'd think they'd be here to save your soul. Maybe offer a prayer, a bit of charity, a way out. But no. They're mostly here to scold, or worse, partake. There's something deeply twisted about watching a man kneel in a chapel at dawn and lie in your bed by nightfall. Yet it happens. Regularly. That's the strange hypocrisy of Tudor England. Your body is a sin when it suits them and a service when it doesn't. Mistress Ellen knows how to play this game. When she hears a bishop's man is coming for inspection, she scrubs the stew with a vengeance. The girls are told to behave. Hair tied back. No laughter. No perfume. She sets out a Bible on the front table even though the last time someone opened it, it had a pressed louse stuck between the pages. The priest arrives by mid-morning. Robes, clean eyes darting like he doesn't want to admit he's inside a brothel. He's younger than you expected. probably 30, too young to be this cold. He lectures you all from the doorway. Repent, he says, as if you haven't been doing that every night before bed. You nod. Everyone does. You're all experts in pretending now. Then, once the performance is over, he leaves, only to return that evening in plain clothes. You recognize him even if he tries to act like someone else. You're not allowed to say anything, of course. Mistress Ellen sees him, nods politely, and shows him to the quietest room. Historians still argue whether the clergy's involvement in the stews was a matter of social control or genuine moral outreach. You've stopped caring. All you know is when priests arrive, everyone tenses. But some religious orders were different. A few tried to help women like you, offering shelter work, even a chance at escape. You once heard of a nunnery in York that took in fallen women, teaching them to sew and pray in peace. But that was 100 miles away. Might as well be the moon. Back in Southwark, faith is just another currency. You hear stories from the older women ones that sound more like confessions, whispered under covers. Had a friar once, says one. Came every Tuesday. Said I had a Holy Spirit. Then asked if I'd wear a wig like his dead wife. She shrugs. Still paid double. Quirky detail of the night. Some brothels kept little statues of saints near the beds, not for piety, but for luck. It's said one stew even had a reliquary containing a saint's finger bone kept near the front door like a charm against raids. You don't have a saint here. Just a worn horseshoe nailed to the beam and a curtain that barely closes. Later, while brushing your hair, you ask Annis if she believes in God. She chuckles. Of course I do. Just not his staff. You both laugh at that too hard, probably. The kind of laughter that leaves something sharp behind your eyes. And it's not just the church. The whole city plays this game. You've seen noble women cross the street to avoid looking at the stew. But you've also seen their husbands slip inside just after dusk. Shame is never about what you do, it's about getting caught. Sometimes, when you light a candle before bed, you catch yourself whispering a prayer. Not for salvation, just for silence, for peace, for one night without bruises or broken teeth. Mangy Jack snores from his spot by the hearth. The wind rattles the shutters. Somewhere outside, bells toll vespers. The sound is beautiful, almost enough to believe in. You lie back the sheet, scratchy against your back, and wonder if there's a God for women like you. Maybe. But if he exists, he must be tired. You recognize him the moment he steps through the door. Not from personal experience, but from the way Mistress Ellen straightens her shoulders, and how Annis hisses through her teeth and mutters, "Careful, that one's got court shoes." He's wearing a fine doublet velvet sleeves and a hat with a feather longer than your arm. His boots are polished, and his breath smells like saffron. Not wine. Saffron. That's not local. That's imported, which means money, power, probably danger. "Good evening, ladies," he says with a smile like a blade. "I'm seeking some privacy." Ellen nods slowly like she's calculating a tax. "Pick who you like," she says, then adds under her breath, "Though mind she walks tomorrow." That's your cue. You step forward with a smile so rehearsed, your cheeks barely twitch. He offers his arm, and you take it. He smells of citrus leather, and something just beneath it, something colder. He doesn't ask your name, just walks with you to the upstairs room, humming a tune that sounds royal. When the curtain closes behind you, the room feels smaller than usual. The nobleman, because yes, he is one, sits in the creaking chair and watches you like he's inspecting a tapestry. "Where are you from?" he asks finally. You lie. Everyone does. He nods, not listening. Then he stands and asks if you've ever served at court. Before you can answer, he pulls something from his coat, a coin. Gold. Real. You've never seen one in person, and that's how it works. You think you have power because you're beautiful, clever, experienced. But one gold coin and you're reminded, power speaks with a feather in its cap and walks out the door without looking back. Tonight you'll entertain not just commoners, but men with titles, knights, lords, merchants with gilt rings on every finger. They want everything. They expect everything. And they pay like they're buying wine at a festival generously, but with no thought of the bottle's bruises. One man asks you to pretend you're his dead wife. Another wants you to slap him. Another just wants to cry while you hum a lullaby. You do it all. Because the wealthy don't pay for pleasure. They pay for control. Historians still argue whether noblemen visiting stews was a public scandal or private understanding. In practice, it was both. The stews of Southwark were close enough to the palace to be accessible, but far enough for plausible deniability. There are whispers, of course. Some say Henry VIII himself visited a brothel here before his first marriage. Others claim he had informants planted in houses like Ellen's to keep tabs on rivals. You're not sure which is worse, the king visiting or the king watching. Tonight, you see the whole ladder of Tudor society parade through your door. A stonemason with hands like spades tenderer than you'd expect. A baker's apprentice who blushes when you undress. A lord's cousin who wears a crucifix and refuses to take off his boots. A foreign merchant who speaks no English but leaves a silver coin wrapped in silk. You're exhausted by midnight, but it's not over. Because here come the rough boys, the ones who paid half price to get in just before the stew's door shuts. They smell of soot and ale and rotten turnip. One slaps your thigh before even speaking. Another offers a bent copper. Ellen takes it anyway. You wonder if they know how much better they're treated here than on the street. Probably not. Men rarely see the walls they build around themselves. A quirky little fact in Tudor times, the stews were sometimes regulated by sumptuary laws. Certain fabrics like velvet or sable couldn't be worn by commoners. But once inside a stew, the rules bent. It was a strange little theater where social classes collapsed for a few hours, until they stood up and left again. By the time the last nobleman laces his boots and tosses a coin without meeting your eye, you feel like a drained wine cup. The stew is quiet again. You sit by the hearth, feet bare shoulder aching. Annis joins you, pours a bit of warmed ale into a cracked cup and says, "The higher they climb, the more they break when they fall." You don't respond, but you think about that gold coin, the way it glittered, the weight of it in your hand, and how little it meant once it was gone. By now, your body isn't just tired, it's turning on you. It starts with a rash. Itches beneath your arms, a bloom of red between your thighs. You ignore it at first. Everyone gets something. It's just part of the job. But then comes the heat. Fever sweat, the kind that sticks to your shift and makes it stink like iron and vinegar. Mistress Ellen eyes you with suspicion when you lean against the wall, shivering after a short session with a client. "You better not be catching anything," she mutters, though she knows it's not a cold. You know it too. Welcome to the next chapter of your employment being sick in a time when no one understands sickness. There's no such thing as safe in Tudor medicine. Diseases pass from client to girl and back again like whispered secrets. You've heard the names, the pox, the burning, the falling sickness, the trembling. But you don't need a name, you need a cure. And here's where it gets laughable. The house has a doctor of sorts, an old man who smells of onion and garlic, who insists on checking your urine by color and taste. He peers at your tongue and prescribes a delightful mixture of vinegar, rosewater, and powdered toad. You drink it. Of course you do. What other option do you have? There are other remedies too. Quack powders sold in dark alleys. Venetian syrups that promise to restore your womb. Pigeon blood sheep dung burned silk. You'd think it was satire, but no, the Tudor medical playbook reads like a cookbook for witches. A particularly infamous one, mercury. They grind it into a salve, smear it across sores, and wrap the skin in cloth until the pain becomes unbearable. You've heard of girls who went mad from it, shaking, drooling, whispering to shadows. Historians still argue whether these mercury treatments helped or simply prolonged agony. What's clear is they were common, especially for those suspected of having the French disease, what we now know as syphilis. You're not sure what you've caught, but the signs are clear: sores, stiffness in your joints, and a dull ache that never fades. One of the older girls whispers that it could be the luz, the creeping poison that eats from the inside out. You try not to listen, and yet you keep working, because no one stops for illness. Mistress Ellen won't let you. So long as you can stand, she says, you can earn. You're not a person, you're a product, a failing one. When you begin coughing up blood, even Annis starts to avoid you. There's a moment, a low point, when you find yourself staring at a rat in the corner of the room, wondering if it feels healthier than you do. Its fur looks sleek. Its eyes shine. Yours haven't for weeks. One night a man asks for something rough. You say no. He doesn't like that. The next morning, Ellen hands you a paste to cover your bruises. Make yourself pretty, she says. You've a regular coming. You paint your cheeks with crushed berries. You chew parsley to hide the rot in your teeth. You smile despite everything. It's either that or starve. And still the diseases spread. The stews are breeding grounds. They always have been. No clean linens, no running water. Bathhouses used to be common in London, but by now most have been shut down or converted into places like this. The irony. The very places meant for cleansing now infect. The Crown knows. Parliament knows. In fact, they occasionally order round up sick girls dragged from brothels and thrown into lock hospitals, often run by the church. There you're treated with more prayer than poultices. There's a fringe tale that sticks with you. One Tudor brothel claimed to have a healing room where girls would rest under silver cloths and be bled gently by leeches imported from France. No one knows if it worked. Most think it was just a marketing gimmick for wealthier clients. You never saw any silver cloths. Eventually, one of your friends disappears. No goodbye. No explanation. Just gone. Anna says she saw her staggering by the river last week, covered in sores. She won't last the month, she adds, like it's weather. And that's the horror of it, how quickly suffering becomes mundane. You ache. You bleed. You carry on. You catch glimpses of yourself in the copper mirror. Skin, pale lips, cracked, one eye red-rimmed from sleeplessness. You don't recognize the girl in the reflection. She looks haunted. One evening, after a particularly painful session, you stagger outside for air. A boy selling hot pies gives you a pitying glance. You sick, he asks. You nod. Then surprise yourself by saying, not sick enough. Because if you were truly ill, hacking, spitting, unable to walk, they'd have to let you rest. Right. You return inside. The room smells of tallow mildew and damp wool. Your mattress is lumpy. Your head pounds. Someone downstairs is crying. You close your eyes. Tomorrow, maybe the rash will be worse. Maybe it'll spread to your face. Maybe you'll collapse mid-client. Maybe Ellen will send you to the church for cleansing, or toss you out like old linens. But tonight you rest. Tomorrow is someone else's problem. The rumors come first, as they always do. You're leaning against the doorway, letting your legs rest, when Annis hisses, they're clearing out Southwark again. You blink. A raid. Worse, she mutters. The Queen's men, they're making a show. It happens like clockwork. Every few months, someone in power decides to care. Not about you, of course, not really. But about appearances. About the state of morality in the capital. About sin and disease and the optics of letting poor men rut in alleyways while noble ladies shop for lace. And so the officials come. You don't hear them at first. But the tension shifts in the house. Footsteps grow hushed. Even Mistress Ellen stops clicking her beads and starts rearranging furniture. You're told to hide anything vulgar, which in a brothel is everything. Silk ribbons are stuffed under beds, powder jars tucked away. Ellen even pulls the paintings off the walls, claiming they're just visiting relatives. Then you hear it boots on cobblestones. Metal clinking. A door thrown open 2 houses down. They're starting. You remember what happened last time. A girl named Bess had tried to run barefoot half naked, and a constable had tripped her with his pike. She broke her arm on the curb. The men laughed. She was dragged away for correction. So you stay still. The knock, when it comes, is loud enough to rattle the panes. Ellen doesn't open immediately. That's her little rebellion. But eventually, she does. What follows is more theater than threat. 2 officers' capes, sweeping behind them, walk through the house with thinly veiled disdain. They inspect rooms, ask questions, glance at you like you're something growing on bad meat. Your license, madam, one demands. Ellen produces a parchment weathered and stained. Technically, she's operating under one of the oldest charters granted by Henry VIII himself. But whether that counts for anything depends on the mood of the officials. They nod eventually. Move on, but they don't leave empty-handed. One of the younger girls, barely more than 14, you suspect, is taken. Too pale, they say. Could be sick. She looks back once, eyes wide with terror, before disappearing into the fog. That night, the stew house is quiet. No laughter, no singing. The ale goes untouched. You ask Ellen where they take the girls. She lights a tallow candle. Bridewell, she says. You've heard of Bridewell. Originally a royal palace, it's now a house of correction. A place for the idle, the sinful, and the poor. Especially women. Especially your kind of women. Inside, you're told they make you spin hemp until your hands bleed. They feed you barely enough to survive. The beatings are regular, the hygiene non-existent. And if you cry out, if you show anything but blank obedience, they double your punishment. Do they let them out? You whisper. Ellen shrugs. Sometimes. Historians still argue whether Bridewell was a genuine attempt at reform or just a convenient place to stash inconvenient women. Records show a few left with new skills sewing washing, but many more simply vanished from the books. Their names stop appearing. Their stories end. The terrifying part, some girls ask to go. Because at least in Bridewell, you're not being pawed at by strangers every hour. At least there they don't pretend your suffering is pleasure. Still, it's a gamble. You stay put. Weeks pass, and the air in Southwark grows thick with fear. There's talk of a cleaning up before a royal procession. The Queen Elizabeth herself is said to be riding through London soon. That means the stews must be hidden, scrubbed, silenced. You're told not to show your face near the river. We don't want to scare the nobles. Someone jokes and no one laughs. To protect her investment, Ellen makes a deal. some coins exchanged with a friendly bailiff, a few favors called in. The brothel goes underground, not literally, but operationally. For a week, the shutters stay closed. Appointments are whispered. Clients enter through the alley at dusk. You barely sleep. One evening, a man arrives in full armor. Not a soldier, he claims to be a knight. Wants something authentic. He smells of wine and righteousness. You ask his name. He just grins and says, "Call me Sir Purity." You bite your tongue. When he leaves, you find a small tear in your shift and a bruised hip. He left no coin. Ellen says nothing. That's the new danger, customers emboldened by the crackdown. They know you're afraid. They know you won't complain. And so the cruelty deepens. Still, the house survives. Just barely. You learn tricks. How to avoid patrols. How to blend in. How to fake a cough to scare away the pickier clients. You wear plain dresses in public now, not red ones. Red means trouble. Red means her. Sometimes you even dream of escape. There's a whisper of a ship sailing to Flanders looking for cooks and maids. You imagine yourself on board, hair tied back, carrying trays instead of bodies. You imagine mornings without bruises, but dreams are luxuries you can't afford. You're too known, too tired, too sick. Instead, you stay. Like a weed growing between cobblestones, resilient, unwanted, endlessly stepped on. The raids come and go, and you're still here. Morning mist hangs low over Southwark, and your feet ache before you've even stood up. The smell of yesterday's boiled onions lingers in the air, mixed with sweat, cheap perfume, and the unmistakable tang of vinegar used to mop the floors. There's no glamour here, just the slow crawl of survival. But today brings whispers, dangerous ones. Have you heard Joan asks, tying her apron? That strange sickness, the one from the western ports. It's in London now. You sigh. Another plague. Not quite, she says. They're calling it the French pox. You've heard of it before, of course. Most working women have. It's not new, not really. Some say the soldiers brought it back after campaigns abroad. Others insist it's divine punishment for loose morals. The church certainly thinks so. No matter the theory, the result is the same: weeping sores, swelling joints, fevers, madness. And if it doesn't kill you, it leaves you broken, disfigured, untouchable. In a business like yours, that's worse than death. You glance at the mirror and catch your own reflection. Too many lines for your age eyes, too hollow. What would happen if you got it? How many days would it take for Ellen to cast you out? Do they have a cure, you ask? Joan snorts. If you've got coin, mercury baths, they say. Makes your hair fall out and your gums bleed. But it's a cure, apparently. Historians still argue whether mercury treatments did more harm than good. Some records describe patients recovering, others descending into tremors and delirium. One popular saying at the time went, "One night with Venus, a lifetime with Mercury." You wonder who first coined that phrase. Probably not someone who worked in a stew, but there's another layer to the story. The women who fall ill are treated like vermin, not just by clients, but by the city. They're locked away in pest houses, hidden in cellars, sometimes dumped at the outskirts of town. And if they die, they're buried in mass graves, unnamed and unblessed. No funeral, no mourning, just another lesson for the living. Ellen gathers everyone in the main room later that evening. Her face's pale lips pinched. "We'll be doing inspections," she says, "daily. You brace yourself." She doesn't mean dusting furniture. A makeshift examination follows Ellen herself with trembling hands, and a candle stub checking for signs. You stare at the wall and try not to flinch. It's humiliating, but necessary. One infected girl could doom the house. That night you hear sobbing from the corner bed. It's Mary. She's only 16. You reach over and squeeze her hand. "I'm scared," she whispers. "Me too." The following week, business slows. Word has gotten out, customers are wary. The ones who do come ask awkward questions, make strange requests. One man demands to see your teeth. Another sniffs your skin like a dog. But there's something more terrifying than poverty or plague suspicion. A rival house accuses you of harboring infected girls. Ellen sends them a pie filled with sheep dung and a sarcastic note. You laugh. It's the only laugh of the day. Then comes the real blow. A man dies in your bed. He had paid well, smelled of cloves, and made polite conversation. Then mid-act he stiffened, gasped, and collapsed like a felled tree. You scream. The others come running. Panic erupts. Was it the pox? Someone yells. No marks, you stammer. He just fell. Ellen calls in a friendly apothecary. He claims it was his heart. Too much wine. Too little virtue. Still the damage is done. The house closes for 3 days. You try not to think about what would have happened if it had been disease. You also try not to think about the irony. If it were you who dropped dead in bed, no one would have summoned a doctor. There are other dangers, too slower, less obvious. The constant crouching strains your knees. The bad posture knots your back. And the cheap cosmetics used to stay appealing, they slowly poison you. One of the fringe details you've picked up, many women in the trade lose their teeth young thanks to white lead used in face powders. You stopped using it a year ago, but the damage is done. A molar aches every time you chew. Still, clients expect you to smile. The deeper horror. You begin to recognize the symptoms of the pox in your regulars. The strange smell. The lesions. One man's nose begins to collapse. You don't say a word, because you need the coin. But every scratch on your skin becomes a cause for panic. Every night you examine yourself in candlelight. Every twinge of pain becomes a countdown. You think about running again. But where would you go? There's a woman in the next neighborhood over. She wears a veil to hide her face. They say she once worked in a high-end house near Westminster. Caught the pox. Survived. Barely. Now she sells charms and tinctures out of a stall. No one makes eye contact with her. Children throw stones. You saw her once. Her eyes met yours. In that instant, you understood each other perfectly. You're looking at your future. The worst part isn't the death or the disfigurement. It's the slow crawling dread. The sense that no matter what you do, how careful you are, how clean, how smart, it's coming for you eventually. Because you're expendable, replaceable, unworthy of protection. And in Tudor England, that's as much a sentence as any. You wake to a fist pounding at the shutters. It's not unusual men arrive drunk or desperate at all hours. But the voice that follows makes your blood chill. In the name of the Queen, Ellen's out of bed before you are. Her eyes are wide, her breath shallow. There's no time to dress properly. Everyone is scrambling, pulling skirts over shiftless bodies, stuffing coin purses into shoes, wiping away the smeared rouge. The door crashes open. 3 officers storm in 2 constables and a city bailiff with a scroll in hand. His voice is nasal, practiced bored. By order of Her Majesty's Court of Aldermen, this house is declared unlawful. All residents are to be taken for questioning. The accusations are vague, operating without license, suspected spread of disease harboring criminals. But none of it matters. When you're in your line of work, they don't need proof, just the will. They march you out barefoot into the morning fog. Passers-by gather like flies. You spot a woman shielding her child's eyes as you pass. Another spits at your feet. God's judgment, she mutters. You want to scream that you pay taxes. that you've never stolen, that you've fed hungry mouths and nursed strangers back to health. But your voice stays buried in your throat. You're herded into a cart packed shoulder to shoulder with the others. Joan beside you, lips tight. Mary sobbing. Ellen stone-faced. The ride to the bridewell is short, but it feels like hours. You've heard of it before, of course. Everyone has. A sprawling institution once meant to reform the wayward. Now, a prison in all but name. Brick walls soaked in centuries of suffering. Iron bars warped by fists and fury. They separate you at intake, strip you, scrub you down like livestock, douse your head in vinegar and comb for lice. A woman with a face like a butcher's apron records your name, well, what you give her. Most girls lie. You do too. Then comes the waiting. Days stretch sour and slow. The food is inedible stew that tastes of mold and sorrow. The beds are worse bare boards shared with rats. But it's the coldness that gets you. Not just the damp air, but the way the guards look through you like you're not even there. And the questioning, always the questioning. Who paid you? Where did they come from? Have you seen signs of the pox? Are you spreading it? Who's your madam? Where's your priest? You answer as little as possible. Every word feels like a trap. One night, Joan doesn't return from her questioning. No one says anything, but the silence is loud. You ask the guard. He shrugs. Moved, he mutters, but his smirk says otherwise. Historians still argue whether Bridewell was more correctional or punitive. Officially, it was designed to reform. In practice, it broke people. Some women were sentenced to beatings 20 lashes across the back. Others to public pillorying stocks in the marketplace where jeers and rotten vegetables rained down like judgment from heaven. You were lucky, relatively. After 5 days, a clerk arrives with a sealed document. Your name is called. You're released. No apology, no coin, no explanation. Just a grunted, you're free to go. Back on the street, you stumble. Southwark is far. You have no shoes, no money, no idea where anyone else has gone. You make your way back to Ellen's house, but it's shuttered, boarded up. Neighbors shake their heads. Gone, one man says. All of them, don't know where. He offers no help, so you sit. You've heard of women who vanish after Bridewell, who drift into the countryside begging until their voices go hoarse. Others enter laundries run by nuns, scrubbing linen in silence for years, names forgotten even by themselves. A few end up in the river. The Thames is cold this time of year. You think about it, briefly, then you remember something, Margaret. The midwife. Before everything collapsed, she once said you could find her across the river near the Apothecary Row, if you ever needed help. So you go. She answers the door cautiously, then pulls you in with a gasp. You look like hell, she says gently, wrapping you in a blanket and feeding you warm broth. She gives you a place to sleep. Not much, just straw in a corner. But it's dry, safe. Days turn into weeks. You start helping around the shop, grinding herbs, fetching water, cleaning jars. It's honest work, unpaid but not unkind. Margaret treats you with respect. She never asks about your past, but she doesn't flinch when you flinch. One morning she hands you a bundle. It's not much, she says, but maybe you can start again. It's a dress, plain serviceable. With it a note scribbled with the name of a woman who runs a laundry near Clerkenwell. She takes girls in, good ones. You don't cry, but your hands tremble as you fold the dress. For the first time in years, you feel something close to hope. Then again, hope is dangerous. That night you overhear two midwives talking. Another girl from the stews, eh, one mutters. Should have burned that dress, says the other. You sigh. You've escaped the brothel, but not the stain. In Tudor England, People believe sin seeps into the skin, that no matter how far you run, the taint follows. And maybe they're right, but as you fall asleep on the straw wrapped in a quilt that smells of lavender and old books, you realize something else. You're still here, still breathing, and that in itself is defiance. You spend the next few months hidden in plain sight. The laundry near Clerkenwell isn't glamorous, far from it. You're on your feet all day, wrists red from scrubbing clothes stiff with steam and soap. But there's food warmth, and no one grabbing at your waist or whispering slurs into your ear. The woman who runs it, Mistress Dally, is brisk but fair. She doesn't ask questions, but she knows. You can tell by the way she looks at your hands, your scars, your quiet flinches when a door slams. She keeps the other girls in check. No gossip, no giggles, just work. You blend in, or try to. But London isn't so large that you can vanish forever. One rainy afternoon, as you're lugging a basket through the muddy alley near the market square, you hear it. "Oi, ain't that one of Ellen's girls?" You freeze. The voice is familiar, oily. Will the whetstone a former client? You'd see him sometimes with his yellowed teeth and breath like old cheese. He steps closer, eyes gleaming. "Didn't know you were still kicking," he says. "Thought the plague took all of you." You mumble something and duck past. He calls after you louder now. "Don't forget what you are, sweetheart. You can't wash sin off with lie." You keep walking, head down. That night, Mistress Dally finds you crying by the wash tub. She doesn't say much, just hands you a piece of bread and sits beside you. Her presence alone is enough. The truth is, the past doesn't let go, not in this world. Your body might be clean, your name changed, your surroundings different. But the whispers linger. In the street, the marketplace, even the church pew. Especially the church pew, Tudor England claims to be godly. But piety often comes hand in hand with cruelty. Some sermons rail against women like you, daughters of Eve, vessels of temptation, servants of Satan. Others offer so-called redemption, public penance with ash on your brow and a sign around your neck, whore. Historians still argue whether the church's attitudes were rooted in scripture or simply convenient hypocrisy. Either way, the message is clear: women may fall, but they never truly rise again. Even so, you try. You find a rhythm: morning bells, laundry, bread with onion, laughter in brief snatches, sleep shallow and dreamless. One day, Margaret visits. She brings herbs and news. "I've heard whispers," she says. "Ellen's not dead. She's in Bristol, running a tavern now. Legit, they say." Your heart stumbles. She asked after you. You don't know what to feel. Grief, gratitude, guilt. You remember Ellen's firm hands on your shoulders, her cigarette voice, her tired eyes. You owe her everything, but also nothing. She profited from you after all. Shielded you, yes, but used you too. Still, the thought of her alive does something strange to your chest. You don't go to Bristol, not yet. Instead, you keep your head down and your fingers busy. But the world doesn't sit still. That winter, the sweating sickness returns. It comes fast. Fever chills, death within hours. The poor drop first, of course. Then the washer girls, one by one. Mistress Dally shuts the doors. Too late. She falls ill 3 days later. You help nurse her, lay cool cloths on her forehead, feed her broth by the spoonful. But she doesn't make it. At her burial, the priest doesn't even get her name right. You take it harder than you expect. With no one left to pay the rent, the laundry closes. The landlord gives you 2 days to clear out. You pack what little you have: a dress, a small mirror, a scrap of ribbon. You find yourself back in the alleys again. Only this time you're not entirely lost. You go to Margaret. She's older now, slower but still sharp. She lets you stay again. You help with poultices, tea blends, even small surgeries. She teaches you things: where to find chamomile in winter, how to bind a cracked rib, how to tell when someone's lying about their wounds. People come to respect you, not for what you were, but for what you can do now. Sometimes a woman will arrive at the door in the middle of the night, shaking, bruised, breathless. You recognize the signs. You take her in, wash her feet, offer warm broth and softer words, and just like that, the cycle continues. You're not proud of your past, but you're not ashamed either, because it taught you how to spot danger, how to endure, how to fight for scraps of dignity in a world designed to strip it from you. One evening, you sit at the apothecary table mixing elderberry syrup for coughs. Margaret watches you. You know she says you could run this place someday. You laugh, then realize she's serious. The idea settles in your bones. Quiet but solid. Run a place of your own. Not a brothel, not a laundry. A real sanctuary. For women who've fallen and women who've climbed back up, nails dirty and backs bent but breathing. It's not a dream, not anymore. Still at night you lie awake sometimes. You think about Joan, about Mary, about all the girls whose stories ended in ditches or dungeons. You wonder what might have been different if anyone had listened sooner. But you're listening now, and maybe that's enough. Spring comes early this year. The air smells of thawing earth and smoke, and the city begins to stir from its winter hush. Birds return to the gutters, boys kick pebbles down lanes again, and at the little apothecary shop where you now spend most of your waking hours, business is good. You've become known in the parish, not by name exactly, but as the young one at Mistress Margaret's. People knock on the door at dawn for tinctures, teas, and the occasional whispered plea. Do you have anything to stop a baby, or my husband's been coughing? Black, please. You always answer kindly, even when the request weighs heavy. You've learned to grind willow bark and dry comfrey leaves, to keep quiet when needed, to trust the pulse in someone's wrist over the panic in their words. And now, you even know how to help other women make choices you were never given. It doesn't always go over well. One afternoon, a boy no older than 15 throws a rock through the window and screams, "Witch," before disappearing around the corner. You sweep up the glass without comment, though your hands shake slightly. Margaret shrugs. Means you're doing something right. The word witch carries weight in Tudor England. It doesn't take much to earn it a mole, a miscarriage, or a mouth that speaks too freely. And midwives, healers, especially those who help other women, they tread a fine line. Historians still argue whether witch trials were about controlling women, repressing folk knowledge, or just scapegoating the poor. Likely a bit of all three. You keep your head low, your remedies subtle. You never promise miracles, only care. But your name is spreading, carefully, quietly. Women you've never met before arrive at dusk, clutching coin in desperation. Some have bruises hidden beneath shawls. Some are barely more than girls, scared and silent. Others are older eyes, hardened with knowing. You see yourself in all of them, and each time you help. You don't ask for thanks, though many offer it. A ribbon, a loaf of bread, a small carved spoon. One leaves behind a bundle wrapped in cloth inside a tiny bone-handled knife and a note. It reads, "For protection. You never know when you'll need it." You keep it hidden in your apron pocket, and you do need it sooner than you expect. One rainy evening, a knock comes just before curfew. You open the door to find a woman you recognize instantly. Not her name, but the look in her eyes. You've seen it in your own reflection. She's soaked through her lip, bleeding, one shoe missing. "My husband," she says. That's all. You pull her inside. As you stitch her split brow, she winces. "I can't go back," she whispers. "He'll kill me." You nod. She stays 3 nights. Helps grind herbs, sweeps the corners, never complains. But then he finds her. He storms in, blustering, shouting that she's his wife, that she's stolen from him. He smells of beer and rage. Margaret steps in first, calm but firm. She's not yours to take. He raises a hand to her, and that's when you pull the knife. It's small. You don't even have to swing it, just hold it steady, pointed low, but it's enough. He falters, sees the blade, sees your eyes. Something in him changes. He leaves muttering curses. You shut the door and breathe. After that, things shift. Margaret insists you start keeping records coded, of course. Who comes, what they need, what you gave. She says you need to think long-term. People like you don't just fade away. You build legacies. You laugh. You never expected to live long enough for a legacy, but the idea grows on you. One day you go back to the Southwark Bridge. It's cleaner now, or maybe you've just changed. You walk past where Ellen's house once stood. It's a bakery now. The smell of sweet bread drifts through the air, almost offensively warm. You sit on the steps across the street and watch the world pass by. Sailors, street girls, city guards. All of them trying to survive. You wonder if any of them remember what was here before. If anyone recalls Joan with her quick hands, or Mary who sang in her sleep, or the girl who once stood barefoot on this same cobblestone, clutching a vial of stolen tincture and trying not to cry. You close your eyes, not in mourning, in gratitude, because you got out. And more than that, you reached back, pulled others out too. You don't think of yourself as brave, just persistent. One breath at a time, one girl at a time. The brutal truth is sex work in Tudor England doesn't offer second chances. But you made one, and with every tincture, you pour every girl you shield, every door you bolt shut after dark, you're still making it. It doesn't erase what came before, but it builds something after, and that might be even more powerful. You wake early now, not because of noise or fear or obligation, but because the city breathes differently at dawn. The Thames silver and still, the gulls screeching like they own the world. Somewhere down the alley, a dog scampers after a rat, and someone's frying onions for a market stall. You love this hour. It's the closest thing to peace Tudor England allows. There's a rhythm to your days now. The same iron kettle on the same hearth. The mortar and pestle worn smooth with use. A quiet knock every few hours. A woman with a question. A man with a lie. A child with a cough. You answer them all. There's no guild for women like you. No crest or title. But the unspoken sisterhood, those who tend, who protect, who mend, it's stronger than any royal charter. Margaret sometimes calls it the undervein of England, and she's not wrong. While kings squabble over thrones and churches burn heretics, it's people like you who keep the flesh from falling off the bones of society. Not that anyone thanks you, not out loud. You're still accused of things, still whispered about, still stared at too long when you buy dried lavender or bread. You've heard yourself called a ruined woman, a midwife of shame, a dangerous influence. And when you hear those things now, you laugh, because there's power in surviving, in adapting, in knowing where the real danger lies and where it doesn't. Like the constable who tried to extort you for silver, who learned the hard way that half the women in your parish have memorized his dirty secrets, or the bishop who sent a boy to spy on you. The boy who came back asking questions he wasn't supposed to, who ended up apprenticing with an herbalist outside the city. You've built something, though. It's not made of stone or parchment. It's stitched into people's memories, their bodies, their stories. One of your girls, Meg, opened her own apothecary in Dover. Another, Clara, now helps at a birthing house near Oxford. They still write sometimes coded letters tucked into baskets or pies or bundles of wool. They sign with pressed flowers or inked thumbs. Margaret says you should publish a book one day. Not under your real name, of course, she chuckles. But gods know someone should write it all down. You've thought about it, what you'd call it. Maybe what the church forgot to bless, or things no man knows how to cure. The truth is, your story isn't rare. That's what's so remarkable. What happened to you has happened to thousands, girls trapped, punished, blamed. Some broke, some vanished, some were burned, but some stitched themselves back together. It wasn't magic, it wasn't fate. It was choosing not to lie down. Over and over and over. Historians still argue whether Tudor England's sex trade was inherently exploitative or surprisingly empowering. Whether women like you were victims or agents of their own fate. The truth lies in the in-between, in the long, messy middle of survival. And you've lived that truth. Some nights you light a candle and read the old Psalms not out of piety, but out of habit. You never did stop whispering to whatever might be listening. You've just changed what you ask for. Now it's protection, strength, quiet dignity. Sometimes when the wind rattles the shutters, just so you imagine the girls you once knew walking nearby. Joan with her missing tooth and sharp wit. Ellen always cold even in summer. Mary, who once believed love could save her. They come and go like shadows, familiar and soft. You carry them with you, and when young women ask, sometimes shyly, sometimes boldly, how you ended up here, you don't answer with details. You simply say, I saw a way out, and I took it. Then I held the door open for the next. They usually smile at that, because it means they're not alone. Not now, not ever again. And one day, perhaps they'll do the same. You smell the smoke before you see it. It's the soft, papery kind, sweetish, and slow drifting through Southwark's crooked chimneys and narrow lanes. Somewhere nearby, someone is burning old linens or herbs, or maybe the very walls of a shuttered brothel. Again, it's not the first time. The city's changing. You can feel it in your bones, in your joints, in the way the cobblestones echo with heavier footsteps. The year is 1546. Henry VIII is dying bloated and furious. His once sprawling palaces are quiet with plotting. His laws, though, are loud as ever. The Reformation has sunk its claws in deep. Monasteries dissolved. Priests silenced. Latin scrubbed from the churches, and the brothels swept away in a righteous fury. The Bishop of London declared them dens of iniquity. Parliament signed it into law. Southwark's stews closed. Just like that. Your old house is gone. Not sold or passed on. Gone. Planks ripped up, lead-stripped stones scattered into carts and forgotten. No one ever says where the women went. But you know, some were absorbed into other trades. Beer sellers, washerwomen, street performers. Some married. Some vanished into the countryside. A few tried to start new lives. Most weren't allowed to. You stayed. Not because it was easy, but because you had roots deeper than the bishop's ink. The walls might collapse, but you still know the corners of the city no one patrols. Still know which apothecaries will trade without questions. Still know how to treat a girl who's bleeding too much and crying too hard. You live quieter now. There are no more bright dresses or bawdy festivals. No singing out the windows. No painted signs of mermaids or unicorns above doorways. But you're still here, and people still knock. They don't call you a whore anymore, not to your face anyway. Now it's midwife, healer, widow, woman of means. You've aged into invisibility, which in Tudor England is the closest thing to freedom. You hear rumors that Queen Mary, when she comes to power, will reinstate old Catholic traditions. That morality will shift again. that everything old will become new again. Maybe, but you're no longer betting your life on kings or clergy. There's an unmarked grave near the riverbank. Small stones piled around it. No name. Just a crooked wooden carving of a hand holding a flame. You built it. For all of them. And when the city sleeps, you sometimes walk there barefoot. Light a candle. Say a name out loud. A name no one else remembers. Not to mourn, to witness. You were once used, bought, shamed, but you were never erased. Historians still debate whether the fall of Southwark's sex trade was moral progress or a brutal erasure of female autonomy. Whether these closures helped women or simply pushed them deeper into silence. You know the answer lies in the bruises that healed and the ones that didn't. Tudor England may have pretended to cleanse itself, but the stain remains, under the floorboards, behind the church bells, in the memories of women like you. The flame you carry now is dim but steady. You no longer run, you no longer hide. And when they ask years from now what it was like, what it really was, you'll smile your crooked smile and say, "It was cruel. It was ugly, and we survived it." That's the truth, and it's more powerful than any prayer. Word count 180, wind down 300 words. You sit by the window now, your knees wrapped in soft wool, your fingers curved gently around a cup of broth that's gone lukewarm. Outside, the sky begins to lighten, just the faintest lavender hue behind a row of gables. Somewhere a rooster calls. The streets are still damp with the hush of night, but the city is stirring again. You've seen so much, felt every cruelty history could conjure, but somehow you're still here. And in the quiet moments when the world forgets to shout, you remember how far you've come. The wind rustles through the eaves like a lullaby. The candle flickers low beside you. The walls no longer creak with footsteps overhead, no longer echo with laughter or weeping. Just the deep, soft silence of a life endured. You breathe slowly now. Let it out even slower. You've lived many names, worn many masks, but none of them matter in this gentle dark. Here in this moment, there is no judgment, no label, just the soft ticking of time carrying you forward into rest. Tonight, the world is still, and you are safe. Let that safety wrap around you like linen. Let your eyes grow heavy. You're not alone. You never were. And now, you can sleep. End of script. Sweet dreams.